Hello everyone and welcome to another edition of the Powell Press. This is week 9 plus 1 of the 2022 legislative session. We're starting with the days of March 7th through March 11th of the 9th week of the legislative session and our extended overtime, which actually just ended on today, which is March the 14th. I'm excited to tell you about the things that went on in this session, and I'll start with last week. But before we do that, let's talk about the Civil Rights Act. On July 2nd, our country will mark the 58th anniversary of the Civil Rights Act, landmark legislation signed by President Lyndon B. Johnson, which banned discrimination and racial segregation in schools. The signing of this historic legislation was unwelcome in some areas of the country, and it helped to launch the Southern Strategy, which relied on appealing to the inherent prejudices to drive enough votes to Republican candidates. A Southern strategy is how Richard Nixon won the White House in 1968. A renewed Southern strategy is how this governor is hoping to do the same. This session is remarkable, not for the passing of good policy that improves the quality of life in Florida, or for the addressing of issues that government ought to be addressing, like soaring property insurance rates, skyrocketing rent hikes, and deteriorating water quality, leading to starving manatees and toxic algae growth. No, this session was remarkable for waging culture wars at the behest of this governor, and it marked a rekindled Southern strategy that singles out African Americans and members of the LGBT community. See, over the past 9 weeks, my office has received countless calls from constituents and non-constituents alike on a host of issues. But not one caller, and I mean not one Floridian, asked me to sponsor legislation limiting the teaching of Black history or banning discussions when kids question sexuality, or even banning books that someone didn't like. No one asked me to make it harder for citizens to change the Constitution or to change voting laws that would make it harder for Floridians to vote. Not one person called my office and asked me to do that. Not one. On last Monday, despite overwhelming opposition from Democrats and students, Republicans in the Senate placed Senate Bill 1557, or actually it's House Bill 1557, the Don't Say Gay bill, which prohibits the discussions of sexual orientation or identity in grades K through 3 on the calendar. This bill was passed on Tuesday without any Democratic support and is now on the governor's desk for final approval or signature. Now, by singling out LGBTQ children and their families, House Bill 1557 not only flies in the face of Christian beliefs of love and tolerance, it also flies in the face of the governor's pronouncement that we are the freest state in the nation. Begging my question again, where's this freedom and who is it for? Who is to be free? More culture war bills quickly followed on Wednesday. It was the governor's anti-woke legislation. Now, that act, which effectively bans the teaching of historical context of our African American history if it compels someone to feel guilt or discomfort, which is a deeply troubling limitation leading to a sanitized, one-sided version of the past. Now, if you're going to tell a story, like I told my colleagues on the floor, tell the whole story. Tell it all. HB 7, the We Hope It Teaches Everyone bill, as I've named it, passed the Senate on Thursday and is heading to the governor's desk. HB 921, which tightens screws on Floridians' ability to get initiatives on the ballot, also passed the Senate on Monday, mostly along party lines. Now, this bill piggybacks off the legislation from last year that was found unconstitutional. The Senate on Thursday passed HB 1467, legislation which effectively puts in process the banning of books. Now, this initiates the process of the banning of books if a parent or a community member finds it offensive. This censorship movement is being pushed nationwide by conservative groups that have targeted such classics as To Kill a Mockingbird, and fears are rising that many of these classics will be banished to strip diversity from our public institutions and our public education. Perhaps it was this fixation on waging culture wars in the name of the governor that took up a disproportionate amount of time. But the legislature was, of course, forced into overtime to pass its one constitutional obligation, a balanced state budget. That final act just happened today, where we completed the budget of $112 billion, which will now be sent to the governor for his approval or vetoes. Now, I am State Senator Bobby Powell Jr. once again asking you to comment, like, share, follow. You can find us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Reminding you, a life of service is a life that counts. We have ended the 2022 legislative session, and I'm coming home. We'll be back in the community doing community events, giving you our updates on behalf of myself, Kirsty Miles, Diane Andre, and Michelle DeMarco. We thank you for joining us, and we'll see you in the community.